So we're recording today's webinar. That's so you guys, it'll be up on the membership site. You can go back and look at it over and over and over again, including all the past recorded webinars and so on. I also need to advise everybody that you need to take care of yourself here. We're going to be talking about adult issues. I never know what topic may trigger somebody somehow, somewhere or other. And I can't be responsible for that. You have to take care of yourself. So if that happens to you and you find yourself triggered, please close out of the webinar, come back to the recording where you can stop and start it at your own comfort level, and so on. Usually we don't have that kind of problem, but for somebody that might be in that situation, please, please, please. Okay, now let me see. Right. Okay. We're going to have an interesting day today. We've got a lot of really good questions, and Sherry and I we'll have group discussions with folks and everything, and I hope to unload and create a lot of understanding here. But before we do that, there's a thing or two I want to discuss. Today in America is a big day. It's almost as big as Christmas. And we call it the Super Bowl. It is the ultimate in our football stuff that we do over here. And it is so big that I think there are more people paying attention to that than they do Christmas, frankly. Okay. But I wanted to talk about that for a little bit. Not everybody here's from America. Not everybody here has this enthusiasm for this game. And I happen to have played that game for 8 years and beat my body up unreasonably over and over and over and over again. Now, interesting thing about that game, and there's something that relates to what we're doing here, is that game, if you think about it, is really a game of war. It's war over real estate. It's also a game that says, we are better than you. We're going to beat you up. We're going to pound you to a pulp, and we are going to reign, and our team is going to get the trophy, okay? So it's all about being better than. Now, if you think about that, that's quite the opposite of what we're seeking here, which is oneness. So the Super Bowl, in one sense, is contrary to what we're trying to do here. It's a better than thing, okay? Now, on the other hand, I want to point something out about that game that does apply here. It is also a game of oneness. I have played on football teams, high school, college, and so on, okay? And those of us who play on these teams, there's a certain camaraderie. There's a certain love amongst the team members that you can't replace with anything else. This is a team of fellows who get together and basically do everything they can to destroy their bodies. I mean, our muscles ache and scream as we're getting into shape, and we get bruised and beaten and everything else in this game, all so that we can work as a team, as oneness. Yes, and we're going to go beat some other team, okay? But that oneness, that camaraderie, that love that exists there, I can tell you from a football player's point of view, and the many hundreds of guys that I've played with and against, etc., that love is an inseparable kind of thing. It's very similar to what our war veterans have. The war veterans who know what it's like to be in combat have a bond with each other, even though that combat is to beat the other guy. They have a love with each other that is inseparable. I have dealt with so many veterans, and even if they don't even know another veteran, there was in some other battalion, some other part of the war, or some other different war, it doesn't matter. There is this camaraderie, this connection, this love that goes on that is really the kind of thing that we're seeking here. So interesting, the Super Bowl today, we have both kinds of things. That which we want to avoid, better than you know, and that which we want to pursue, the love among us. Okay, working together and so on. So, in a way, we are a team here today. We are, hold on a minute, we are working together towards an end so that we don't have to beat up everybody else and so on and so forth. So let me take a look at our group that's raised their hands here. Okay. All right, now I don't know if Maria is here today. Maria. I don't see Maria. Okay. Gabrielle Rutten, if you would come on for a moment, I'm going to unmute you. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, great. We only see we don't see your face. We see your name.
Yes, I just turned off my video camera.
Ah, there you are.
Because I was eating.
I want you here for a reason that you don't know anything about. Okay.
Good. Just.
Okay. I had a conversation with Maria. Maria, for those of you who have been our webinars in the last few months, was on a while back with her daughter, Salome. And her daughter, if you recall, had one eye that appeared to be much smaller than the another eye. And we did a lot of work for emotional work for both for Maria and for her daughter, hopefully to do some improvement, not only with Maria and her ability to handle all the stuff going on with her children, but also for Salome and her eye. Now, I got a note from Maria here a few days ago, and we talked about it on Skype. And her doctors had told her originally, when she was first born, and Salome is now about a year old, 11 months old, something like that. When she was first born, that one of her eyes was about 30% smaller than the other one. They did a bunch of tests and MRIs and things like this to assess that. Okay. And so they had a long name for what the issue was and all of this. So we worked with this. Now, Maria wrote to me rather enthusiastic, saying to me, Gary, we did the MRI and the eyeball is near normal. In fact, it is so near normal, what little bit it is under, beneath normal in size is within normal fluctuation range of the size of an eyeball. Okay. Wonderful. I mean, that would give evidence that what we were doing had some physical effect on this young girl. Okay. Now, this is why I wanted to bring you on, Gabrielle, because you're an MD. Okay. She then just wrote to me yesterday and said, I'm surprised. I'm very surprised because I have the scans, the before and after scans now. And I'm looking at the scan, the original scans. And the original scans show the eyeball to be a normal size, just like the current scans do. He said, the doctors were convinced that it was smaller to be the first time, but yet the scans show otherwise. So, Gabrielle, wisdom, please.
Oh, that's an interesting riddle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because did she tell you how the doctors are trying to explain this? Is that in the mail?
No, it's not in the mail. I don't know how they're trying to explain it. The way the guess that Maria has, because everybody was so convinced early about all this. Her guess is that because in the spiritual realm, time means nothing. Therefore, this before MRI would look the same as the current. I don't know. I mean, that was her guess. Okay, that's a bit of a reach to me, but that's as far as I can go.
Yes. Well, so let's presume that the doctors, when they told them, the parents, that one eye was significantly smaller than the other one, that they were using their eyes and that they were reporting what they were actually seeing.
Yes.
If you look at the prognosis, the medical prognosis in regular medicine, it's very uncommon, if not impossible, that the eye would, sort of grow and catch up with the other eye so quickly, because Salome is still a baby. Sometimes you see that, later on in life, the difference becomes a little smaller, but this is rather remarkable that her eyes are the same. So I would just love to hear what the doctors are trying to say. I don't know, you see, in regular medicine, this is not possible, but in unseen therapist medicine, this is possible. And obviously, the facts are there. Her eyes are very similar in size, and it's looking normal. I wasn't here, but I just opened my email and I saw the scans because you sent me the email. And I also cannot find any difference between the old scan and the new one. The eyes are exactly the same. So I can't explain this, but let's just say miracles can happen. I don't know.
Well,
I have not yet seen this effect, retrospectively in the old scan. I do have seen scans where the old scan shows like a tumor or what have you, and then the new one shows absolutely nothing or everything is fine. But the old scan, I don't understand why the doctors would have told these parents and scared them with this diagnosis, because I can't really detect the defect in the scan.
Yeah. Okay.
As was sent to me.
Well, all right. I want to do a little group work here, but let me compare another note with you if I can, Gabrielle. What the doctors are saying is that the reason the eye, one of the reasons why the eye appears smaller, cosmetically, is because the optic nerve leading from the eye, back of the eye to the brain or wherever it goes, is shorter than it should be. And as a result, that's also impacting her vision and so on. So what I wanted to do here was just spend a few moments in behalf of Salome, aiming at the optic nerve and doing whatever is necessary to see if we can't lengthen it or whatever. So, but from a doctor's point of view, would you say that's a good approach to lengthen, or just to be more general and say fix the eye?
I think it's a very nice idea to do that, because you could see the optic nerve as a sort of leash. So the eyeball is on a leash, and if we work on loosening lengthening the leash so that the eye has all the room it needs to be perfectly normal and comparable with the other eye, I think that's a very nice approach. I would go for this. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm always, first of all, unseen therapist does not need our metaphors, okay? It does not necessarily need our approach. It does need our cooperation. It does need, our involvement, kind of thing. So when I say, well, gee, the doctors are saying, that optic nerve needs to be longer or stressed or something like that, actually, unseen therapist is wiser than the doctors in that that may not actually be the problem. It may be something else that needs to happen first before this naturally happens. It may take time to do it. There's a lot of things go in there that are even beyond the idea or the knowledge of the doctors with all the training and so on. So I hesitate a little bit to say, oh, well, just go in there and just stress that baby out.
Okay, so if you put it like this, I would need to agree with you, because otherwise we sort of decide what needs to happen, whereas unseen therapist knows so much better what needs to happen. Yeah. So if we follow that line, then we would need to go for just, whatever needs to happen will happen, right, and make it a little broader.
Sure. I think what I'll do, thank you, Gabrielle. I think what I'll do here is just lead the whole group on something. Now, remember, when we do this group, we are doing it for Salome, this young girl, in Europe, and when we do that, if we also write down or be aware of an issue of our own, typically a specific event of our own that is not resolved well, As we work for somebody else, like Salome, when we do this and do this well, especially when we do it as a group, the likelihood is you will get resolution on your own issue. Again, I've said this many times, all of our issues are really the same, only the details are different. Okay. So, with that in mind, if I could get everybody kindly to close the eyes and just notice a loving moment. Tune into a loving moment like you've been taught to do before. Doesn't have to be a big Hollywood event, just a memory of a loving moment. Okay. And then shift your focus to young Salome, roughly 11 years old, with this eye issue. And we're aiming here at symptom, by the way, at least for now, with a shortened optic nerve. And something has to happen in order for normal vision to occur. We don't know exactly what it is. The doctors say that optic nerve needs to be longer, so whatever it takes to do that, great. But we need to share love with Salome and her eye, and spend a moment, just spend a moment, if you will, just generating a little love and sending it, sharing it with Salome. Let's take maybe 30 seconds for that, and we'll be back for some more. All right, keeping the eyes closed. We will keep our focus on Salome, but now we're going to at least guess at what emotional issues may be behind this. Could have happened in the womb. If it fits with your belief system, it could happen in a past life. We don't know. We're going to make assumption that there is some kind of emotional issue that is behind this malformation, if you will, in Salome's eye. And one way to address that is just to generate this love and put it someplace in your body, like your heart, for example. And then let your heart be Salome's heart. And then start pulsing the heart. And each time you pulse, let the love grow so it grows throughout her whole body, not taking care of just her eye, but the emotional response, the emotional peace in her whole body to hopefully resolve any emotional issue that may be behind the malformed eye. Do that in a pulsing sense. We'll take 2 minutes to do that, then we'll come back. Okay. Go ahead, open the eyes, and we will see what happens with Salome as time goes on. I also want to give you one more little update here before we get into our questions, and that's with our very dear friend Catherine, who is so gracious to allow us to work with her on her challenging issues, being paralyzed, and so on. I talked to her just recently, and I know you've worked with her, Gabrielle, as well. Gabrielle, you might want to put your microphone back on. Are you there? Well, hold on. Let me see. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I had muted myself, but then you can't unmute yourself. Only you can do that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, anyway. So I talked with Catherine, and since the last time we worked on a webinar, which is about a month ago, some of that coldness that was a problem has come back. It still shows up. Okay. But her pains, spasms are virtually gone. She gets very occasional spasms, but usually she has some kind of a harness in her wheelchair. And the spasms come in, it actually moves her and makes her uncomfortable in the chair and so on. She no longer needs that. And for the first time, she's able to have movement. I don't know if you talked about this with her, but she can move her shoulders. Are you aware of that, Gabrielle?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. So I worked with her yesterday, the day before, or talked with her a little bit, and she was able to move her shoulders on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is quite normal and 0 is none at all, to a 0.3. I mean, it's small, but it's noticeable. She's able to do it like this 3 times. That's what she was able to do on her own. Now, we did one round with Unseen Therapists. We did a couple of rounds, I think. And at the end of all of that, she was able to do it 9 times. I don't know where she is now, but that's moving in the right direction. Plus, she's starting to she had on one occasion some extraordinarily strong feelings on the inner sides of her legs, which she had never had before. You're familiar with this, are you?
I didn't hear this one, but I don't know whether she mentioned this to you, but she also started feeling like what's that called in English? I don't know. She started feeling something in some of her fingers, and also when she visualized moving her toe, her leg would react.
Oh,
Did she
okay.
share this with you?
No, I didn't hear about that. I basically just had a conversation. I wanted to know how things were going. I had a conversation with her, and then we just ended up doing a little session. But anyway, what I want to point out, people are concerned about and interested in how she's doing, and so that's where we are at this point. So, okay, thank you. Now, let me see.
Gary, can I mute myself?
You may.
Thank you.
Let me see. Maria. Oh, there's Maria. I didn't know she was here. Okay, let's bring Maria. Maria, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
I just came in at the very end, and I heard, "Let's see what happens with Salome as something like this." And yeah.
We just did a whole group session.
Yeah.
For Salome for the shortened thing, and we were, along with Gabrielle, we were commiserating about the difference or lack of difference. Why and I was supposed to be 30% smaller, and yet it isn't.
Yeah. Really confuses me. I'm completely confused. I don't understand it, because we went to professors who are like at the top of their game in this field, and they told us something that when I look at the scans now, it's so clear that the eyes are not that different. But we were getting told all this stuff, so I don't know what it means. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the mysteries we have to deal with. So, thanks. I'm gonna mute you. Hold on a second. All right. Now, I wanted to talk with Hari Simran, but Hari, I don't see you. Hold on a minute. Where are you? There you are. I'm going to unmute you, Hari. Are you there? Hari Simran, are you there?
Not yet.
There you are. Okay. All right. You have the first question today, the first thing we're going to investigate and so on. And we've had some conversations. I want to get to it here for a moment. Now, you and I worked on this a little bit, but I want to extend the conversation, Hari Simran, so that everybody learns from what we were talking about. You were having a food allergy problem, yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you still have it?
Oh, yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. And one of the things you asked me was, well, gee, Gary, how do we find out what the specific events are behind a food sensitivity or food allergy?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall what I said or what we talked about?
Not really.
That's all right.
I should go over it.
You don't need to. So, okay. And this question happens a lot with physical issues. You could ask the very same question about a food allergy as you could about multiple sclerosis or migraine headaches or any other physical symptom. The general question is, how do we find the specific events that are behind the physical symptom? Because it's not always very obvious. Okay.
Mm-mm.
I have a migraine headache. I've had it for a long time. I've got food allergies. You know, what specific event made my food allergy, et cetera. Okay. So I want to answer that. Sherry will bring in her own answers and so on. But let me explore with you for a moment. The food allergies you have, is there lots and lots and lots of them? A few? What?
There's lots of them. Dairy, gluten, sugar, things that cause inflammation in my body.
Well, dairy, gluten, and sugar are generally speaking no-nos anyway.
Right. It's true.
Are you allergic to foods other than the no-no list?
Well, when I eat those foods, what happens is I feel a lot of pain in my body.
Well, okay, but let me back up.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat those foods,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but what if you eat something else, like carrots or chicken or something like that?
I also can't eat potatoes. Yeah, but chicken's fine. I can't eat a lot of different foods. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Carrots are great.
Well, in one sense, having a strong reaction to dairy, gluten, and sugar is probably good.
I can't. It's just I can't gain weight though. You know, everything. It seems like has either sugar or gluten or dairy in it. You know?
Well,
there's a lot
in the American supermarkets, yes.
Yeah.
Understand. But okay, but let's get to how we find specific events that are underneath a physical ailment of any kind, food allergy or otherwise. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's completely unclear to you why it is that something that has gluten in it really causes you such a huge reaction when it doesn't do that to other people.
Right.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, one of the first things we would ask is, well, gee, when did your sensitivity to gluten first start? Do you remember?
I think it was in my mid-50s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in your mid-50s or thereabouts, or sometime prior to that,
Right.
are you aware of there being an emotional issue which may have contributed to it, unresolved emotional issue?
No, I haven't been able to identify it then.
Okay. All right. Now, the other sensitivities that you have,
Mm-hmm.
the dairy and the sugar, for example, did those show up at the same time as the gluten one?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, that gives a clue. That gives a clue that there's something happening emotionally speaking around there. Now I know at one point, because you wrote to me, you had a whole series of things that happened within a 6-month period of emotional hits, if you will. Was
Right.
that prior to your allergy?
Yeah,
Before?
yes. That was in my late 20s.
Okay, so that's maybe 10 or 20 years or something prior to
Right.
the sensitivity showing up.
Right. I used to get little aches and pains, but nothing very serious. So maybe it was hiding. What do you think?
Well, that's part of the mystery. So you see, there's an art to this.
Yeah.
There's an art to this. And so what we do is we start asking questions. And one of my favorite questions is, what emotional issues may have been around about the time that you started to have these
Right.
symptoms. Now, sometimes it's fairly obvious. Oh, yes, my daughter died at this young age, and I've never gotten over it. And ever since then, I've had these symptoms. Okay, now that becomes pretty obvious, and we can start working on that emotional issue. Now, what you're talking about is something that happened a decade or two earlier, and may have just gradually snuck up on it. Okay.
Yes.
So that gives us less precision, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. But nonetheless, those things in that 6-month period that went on that were so traumatically harmful to you need to be resolved whether or not they are contributors to the food sensitivity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Now, have you worked on those specific traumatic events?
Yes.
And what has happened?
It's diffused a lot of the charge. It's like I can go back and test it, and it doesn't bother me anymore.
Okay. And so there were several of them, but you broke them down into specific events,
Mm-hmm.
used the unseen therapist for them,
Correct.
and they don't seem to get you. I mean, you've tested it
Yes.
many times and so on.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to bother you. Since doing that, and how long ago did you do that?
I keep repeating them over and over, like within the last week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then within the last week, have you noticed that your physical symptoms from food allergies have changed?
Actually, they got a little worse.
Oh, they did. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
They got a little worse. Like my knees and stuff started hurting much worse. But now it's better. It's like the more I do my sessions and devote the time to it, things keep getting better and better. Definitely. There's no doubt.
Okay. But I want to make sure I understood this.
Yeah.
So you would deal with these traumatic
Mhm.
events in this 6-month period.
Right.
And as you were doing that, some of your symptoms, like your knees, for example, got worse and then got better?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it just the knees or something else?
I think it was mainly my knees.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And have knees been bothering you over your lifetime or just recently or?
Off and on through my life. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And so how are your knees now?
Not too bad. Just a little bit achy.
Well, remember, I'm an engineer, so let's use numbers.
Okay. I'd
So-
say probably around 6.
A 6. Well, where did they start?
Well, I think, it's interesting. I think I talked to you that I got diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I remember getting bit by a tick right around the same time, or even before all this other stuff happened. So, yeah, and you were saying we don't look at the symptoms, we look at the events. So I think when I finally got diagnosed with Lyme disease, right?
Yes.
Because I wasn't getting, nothing else was coming up, no arthritis tests, no nothing. That's when I started getting a lot of the food allergies also. It's like my immune system was weak. I never
Okay.
had any food allergies ever before that.
All right.
I don't know if it was psychological or.
Okay. I want to shift here just for a second.
Sure.
I'm going to bring in Gabrielle for a moment. Gabrielle, are you there?
Yes.
I have a view of
Yes,
Lyme. I have a non-medical view of Lyme disease.
yeah.
I would like to share it with you.
Okay.
And if you agree, fine. If you don't agree, so be it. But it would have some impact here. I live in an area where there are very, very tall grasses all over the place. And ticks of various kinds live there, okay? And people are forever going through these tall grasses, etc., and getting bit by ticks, okay? Some people end up with Lyme's disease. Other people get nothing. So does the tick really cause Lyme's disease? Or is there something else that the person is bringing to the table together with the tick's poison that's causing it? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to be politically correct, but I guess I can't, because I tend to agree with you, Gary, that ticks as such are not the problem, or whatever bacteria they are carrying with them and infecting you with. And that is not the view of regular medicine. I agree that there's more people being bitten by ticks that never ever get infected or get Lyme disease. And there's a portion of people that get Lyme disease. And I really truly believe that the reason that you do become ill is because there are emotional issues.
Right.
And let me just point out that even though it is worth your while to look at like the year or maybe the 2 year or the 5 year period before something manifests itself as a disease or complaints or problems, that is a very good way to start. However, if you can't sort of identify stuff in that period, go back.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's 20 years ago and
Yeah.
you're carrying around emotional baggage, and it takes a while before it manifests itself. So don't stop there. Go back.
Right. I agree.
And I was going to get to exactly that point. But okay, so thank you, Gabrielle.
I agree.
Okay, so there is some logic, at least from the optimal EFT unseen therapist approach, that is not the tick and the Lyme disease. There are other, they may contribute to it, but the ultimate cause is there's still some unresolved emotional stuff going on now. And as you resolve these things in this 6-month period, and your symptoms get better as you're talking about,
Yes.
those symptoms now, and this is an important thing to understand, it's part of the art of this, those symptoms now become a barometer for how well you're doing with the emotional issues, or whether you've gotten the emotional issues, all of them done yet, etc.
Right.
Now, one of the things you said to me, and I want to give you stars for this, Hari Seven, was that you have diligently, as you read my book, The Unseen Therapist, taken your specific events, done this personal peace procedure on like 50 or so of them, and done it fairly religiously. And you've noticed many things have gotten better and better and better and better. Yes?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Now, but there's still things left, right?
Oh, yeah. Still a work in process here.
So the question now is, and this becomes a little bit of trial and error. Have I really taken care of the existing ones that I know about as well as I might? Okay.
Okay.
And we're probably going to touch on this several times over these webinars, but one of the things that happens is you'll deal with a specific event, and it will seem to be fine. And you may even test it the next day, and it seems to be fine, etc.
Right.
But unbeknownst to you, there is a more foundational one underneath it still. It's often bouncing off of it. Quite often that one you think got taken care of, as you test it later on, it starts showing up again.
Right. That's happening.
Different aspects and so on. So I'll give you a simple little example. Somebody in the workplace is really unhappy with Sue Ellen in the workplace. Okay, Sue Ellen in the workplace bothers them no end. Don't like her gestures, don't like the way she talks, don't like the way she says things, etc. And every time you see Sue Ellen, some emotional stuff comes up. So they go tap, 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 or not tap, tap, but EFT, EFT, EFT on the response to Sue Ellen. And the response maybe gets a little better, but Sue Ellen still just won't go away. Okay?
Right.
Now, the likelihood is that's because Sue Ellen reminds them of Janie Richards from the 3rd grade, or their 2nd grade teacher, or their mother who abused them when they were so and so and or something like that. And so it's that one further back that needs to get resolved. And sometimes we just need to keep at it, and we will start getting these things. They're like, well, let me ask you. We haven't brought you in here, Sherry, but oftentimes when you're in something like this, and you can't find that specific event, or you can't locate it, or it doesn't show up somehow, do you ever ask unseen therapists to show it up for you? That's a question for Sherry.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I can do that, and I think this is something everybody can relate to. When we approach healing for a specific physical issue, we want to know what is the specific event sponsoring that issue. Mm-hmm. And certainly I ask unseen therapists, I do the best I can to look at the obvious potential sponsors. For you, you're sensitive to some foods. So an obvious place to start would be what person or event am I sensitive to still from the past? Or I've got inflammation in my body. Who or what is causing me to be inflamed? What happened that's causing me to be inflamed or angry? Mm-hmm. At some point, I then abandon that obvious search for sponsors and just look at what person event is still causing me some sort of pain. And then we look to resolve that. Whether it's sponsoring your particular physical issue or not, we don't know. But that is more what we need to look at. Yeah. I know there's a real temptation to just want to, what specifically is causing this specific physical issue? And I think that can be disappointing sometimes when I think what we really need to do is we have this physical issue, but let's go look in our lives from early on. What baggage are we still dragging with us? What's still causing us sensitivity and inflammation, so to speak? And then resolve that. And then sometimes things that we're not really looking at healing will heal.
Exactly.
I've had that happen where we're looking to heal a certain thing and we just go after whatever unseen therapist brings up into our conscious awareness. And at the time, we have no idea if it's attached to it or not, but I always believe in resolving whatever the subconscious puts on your radar at that moment. And I feel it's unseen therapists telling us this is what needs to go now. Is it directly related? I don't know, but it could be related to something else. It could be something that needs to be healed because it hasn't yet evolved into yet another physical issue, which could be more serious. And unseen therapist wants us to release that and not focus so much on a food sensitivity.
Right.
You know, there's all sorts of things going on that we're not aware of. And sometimes when we resolve a big issue, a big event, and people say, yes, but I'm still sensitive to food. For all we know, unseen therapists guided us to heal something that could have manifested into something of a physical nature that's more serious down the road, and now that's not going to happen. We will never know that, of course, because it's already healed, But I think we all need to relax about going after what are the specifics for this specific physical issue and just go after whatever unseen therapist drops in the moment.
Right.
Well,
Perfect.
let me interject here a little bit too, if I can. As we're beginners at this, as we're trying to learn, etc., some of the more advanced things like let's ask unseen therapists to tell us. Okay, those things happen the more experience you get. Okay, sometimes it's just a notion that will occur and we don't pay attention to it because we're not really ready yet to listen. Okay, and so on. So this whole idea of let's find a specific event behind a specific issue. That's a very great learning tool. Because it often works that way, okay. But when it doesn't, then we have to get into some of the more artsy stuff, and that's what we're doing here. Now, let me sort of summarize all of this if I can, and then we're going to move on. As far as finding the specific events behind a physical issue are concerned, I usually try to, with questions, find out when it happened and if there were some obvious emotional issues going on at about that time. Okay. And if so, great. And oftentimes that's all we need to do. And that's simple, straightforward, and so on. When it isn't that, then we've got to go further back. And the further back we go, the less precise we can be about how related they may be. So when you're in that position, this is a good time to go back to what I wrote in the book, and that's to just start listing your specific events and start collapsing them one at a time. They may not all relate to this particular physical issue, but some of them are likely to. As you do that and keep doing it, you clean house and clean house and clean house, and physical symptoms start to fade as a result because the causes for them aren't there. So that's a rather, there's 3 levels. One is try to find out when it started and what an emotional may be. Number 2, go back and start doing all your specific events because you're bound to find some in there that are going to take care of the issue or help with the issue anyway. And thirdly, which is a more advanced way, ask or be ready to listen to unseen therapists giving you a notion about this specific event. You forgot this, that kind of thing. Okay. So that's kind of a summary thing. Okay. How do we do?
That's perfect.
Okay.
I love that.
All right. Thanks, Hari Simran. We're gonna move on here in just a minute. I've got to find you and mute you here for a second. First of all, Josue Rodriguez.
Hello.
There you are. Did I pronounce your name right this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You and I had an interesting conversation. Maybe a couple of weeks ago. I assume you recall that?
Yes.
All right. And you said it was okay to discuss your issue here, although not necessarily the real details. But basically, what was going on was that when you were a youth, you made an error. You made a mistake. You did something that you considered to be terrible. Okay. And as a result of that, and correct me if I'm not saying this correct, Josue, as a result of that, you got to the point, well, gee, if anybody knew what I did, they wouldn't love me. And it gets in your way of having, getting into a loving experience to invite unseen therapists and so on. Did I say it right?
Exactly right.
Exactly right. Okay. Now, we talked about this a little bit. And what I saw immediately, and this is one of our more advanced kind of areas, was we probably need to reframe this thing. I did not know at the time, and I still don't know what this terrible thing was, but it was done when you were a youth, okay? But I asked you a question. I said, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I want to ask you again. I said, well, how does that thing that you did compare to Hitler?
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was like, it does not compare. It didn't kill anybody.
or come anywhere close to any of that
right.
stuff. Okay. Now, the purpose of that, and that's just a simple question, but it's a reframe. Okay, when you ask somebody a question that will cause them to see the whole situation in a different light, that is now a reframe. It's a different way of seeing it. So, from the viewpoint of Josue, looking back at age 15, 16, whatever that was, okay, and looking back at this terrible thing that you are building up, this mountain of grief and guilt and whatever you want to call it, compared to Hitler, it's nothing.
Right.
So I gather it was an effective reframe because you laughed at the time, was it?
Right. Hmm. I still do.
Okay. So we did some other things. We talked about your response to that issue. And let me back up and say and repeat again that just about everything we do here isn't on what happened once upon a time or who did what to whom. It's always our response to those things. It's always how we respond to that, okay? That's what we can do. We can't change what happened. We can change how we respond to it, the degree of our guilt, anger, fear, grief, and so on, okay? But we were talking about an excess response. Do you recall that?
Yes, definitely.
Tell me what you remember about that.
What I remember is that when we were talking about the excess part, there's a normal part. If you do something that you're not proud of, that you will feel some sort of way, some sort of shame, some sort of regret. And that's kind of expected because, it's normal. Now, what the troubling part is when there's excess of it and you're carrying around this for a whip and you keep whipping yourself with it because I don't know if those were the exact words in the conversation, but sort of went that way.
Very good, and you too get some stars for that, okay? So, but here's the idea. Yes, on a guilt issue, there's not a person on this planet, and I'm speaking for everybody here, listening in as well as everybody else, who wouldn't love to turn back the clock and redo a few things, a few decisions, a few behaviors, a few whatevers, and some things we go, oh God, did I really do that?
Right.
And so on. Nobody here is immune from that. In fact, if I wanted to be a multi-zillionaire, all I would have to do is develop a pill where you can swallow it and all that guilt goes away.
I'll buy a few.
Well, so would everybody here, by the way. So whatever we may have done, it's one thing to have some remorse about it. Oh, God, I wish I hadn't. Oh, I did that. Oh, geez, kind of thing. And that might be at a scale of 0 to 10, maybe, I don't know, a level 2 or something, or maybe a 3, and that would be something like normal. But to do what you were doing, to beat yourself up about it, to use your metaphor, you're whipping yourself with it, etc., that's excess. That's over the top. And that's what we can do with unseen therapists and EFT and optimal EFT and all of this. We take care of the excess. Okay. Now, you were going to do some work on that, if I recall it right. Can you inform me as to what you were doing and how it's worked in the meantime?
Sure. If you remember, I told you I had 3 ratings for the same issue. There was an anger issue that led me to do that. And then there was after I did it, it was oh my God, what did I do? So it was a shame issue, a personal shame, but also a fear of public shame if someone else knew.
Yes.
And so my personal shame, I had been, ever since I got the Unseen Therapist ebook, I work with that specific event is part of my list. And I was able to take the personal shame and the public shame from a 10 to, I guess, about an 8. In one of the webinars we did with Catherine, I remember the public shame that was still not moving, it had gone from an 8 to a 5. And then it's when I got stuck. after our conversation, I felt talking to you. I even asked you, "Are you doing some conversational EFT with me?" Because I feel it going from a 5 to a 4. It's going lower. And now I after a few more sessions on myself and going through some of the webinars online, I can say it's reached the normal point. I don't feel any more excess. I still have this, like, I'm not going to tell anybody what it was
Yeah.
if they don't ask me. If it doesn't come up, I don't have to say it. But I think it's a normal, super normal response. It's about a 2. Whereas the anger issue, it's completely gone. And the personal shame, it's also in a 1 or a 0.
Okay. Now, good. More stars, Josue. But I want to ask you. You probably haven't thought about this kind of a thing for an answer. So just do your best with it. Okay.
Okay.
As far as you can tell, how much weight did my question about how does your guilt issue compare to Hitler? How impactful was that compared to all the rest of it?
I think there were 2 questions that you asked me, and that was one of them. That sort of completely flipped my mind on how terrible I felt it was. When you asked that question, it was like, I can laugh about this because it's completely a non-issue. But then you asked me something, who would not love you if they found out?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
And I said, oh, my mom would have a fit. And then you said, how long would that fit last or something? Or how long do you think she will stop talking to you? And then that was the question that was like, it made me laugh too. It was the question I really needed to hear was that one, because it was like, oh, probably a week.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Okay. Well, now, if your response was no, she probably would disown me forever.
Right.
Okay. Well, if that really was your belief and your response, of course, you would never tell her because you wouldn't want to do that and so on. But that's more of an issue within your mother. See, but anyway, so we're always talking about your response to these things. So I asked you these 2 questions, who would not love you if, and so on, and the one about Hitler and all this. Those were both reframing questions. And I'm so glad we're talking about this, because reframing is I've got a whole article on it, on the lessons in our membership group and all of that. But this is the kind of, it's an art. It's an art, and it takes experience. And so that's why I have so many sessions recorded on our membership. And a lot of them are the tapping sessions, but the reframes are all there. And so you can go watch all of those and start picking, reframe, and start making notes of them. And as you do, and a particular one, means something to you, that's now in your basket of reframes to use. You have to build your own basket, so to speak. Okay. But after you get used to this after a while, and somebody brings you something up, a question automatically comes up. Like I never thought about the Hitler thing until you started to tell me how bad this thing was.
Right.
And the question that came up is, well, compared to what, and so I asked you this question. Okay. So it's a skill. And I'm using reframes all the time on these webinars and so on. So there's an unlimited, the number of reframes you can use are just endless, but you're going to find a whole big basket of them here and start developing your own. Okay, I'm going to go on unless you have more you want to visit on, Josue.
No, I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Hold on a second here. Let me, all right, Muriel. Whoops, are you there? Say something, Muriel.
Hi, I'm here.
You're there. Hi. All right, let me get Muriel in front of me here for a moment, if I may. You had a couple of questions, and you wrote me here just recently too. But the centerpiece of your question, I want to get to the centerpiece first. Is it, am I doing it right? Did I say it right?
Yes. Point. This is what I always wonder about. I always worry about.
Well, I think you are just echoing everybody's thoughts. Okay. Am I doing it right? Okay. Now, you were giving, I'm going to address that as we address some of these other things here, but you gave me here an example. And let me, I'm going to read over this for a moment. You were dealing with you did very successfully using EFT with a 14-year-old boy.
Exactly.
He responded very well. You tested and retested, you said, and so on. And all this had to do with an abusive father.
Yeah.
There was a divorce between an abusive father, and he would pound and he would shout and pound on locked doors. The kids were behind the locked doors, and kind of a frightening, violent kind of thing. So you dealt with the young boy successfully. Along comes his 10-year-old sister. And she says, I want some of that magic too.
Exactly.
All right. But it didn't seem to work for you. Describe what happened, would you?
Okay, well, I started a week after the boy. First, I saw the boy again, and I retested if he was still, and he had another question to me, and he said, yes, I wanted to see you again because I didn't understand why my father could do this to me if he loves me, because we decided, both of us, that he thought his father loved him. Part of him thought that his father loved him and that he loved his father and all that. And then he said, I'm still struggling with one question. And I said, okay, let's have it. And he said, but no, actually, I don't worry about it anymore. Like, why could my father do this to me? The horrible shouting and all of that. And I said, well, have you solved the question? He said, yes, I don't worry about it anymore. It's there. I don't need the answer and all of that. And so after that, and I tested again, and he was all right. And I said, you're going soon to see your father again. Are you still afraid? And he said, no, there's no problem. I can go and see my dad, and there's no problem. I know him. And I also tested, and I said, can you then name a moment when you know that he loves you? Because the father will not put his arms around his kids and all that. So I said, how do you know? And he said, it's when he lets me drive the car. Typical boys. So, and it was all right. He was really all right. Then I went on to the sister, and she had said to her mother, with whom I had also been tapping on her own personal issues, I can't wait to tap myself. And so we sat down and we started, and I said, what's the issue? And it was a different event from the boy. So she told me what happened, the event, and that she was very scared of her father, and that she thought at some point in time that he was going to kill her. But she was talking about it, you know, in a very easy way. So I thought, she knows what tapping is about and all that. And turned out that when we started dealing with taking the event apart, first her father was calling her, and she had to go down the stairs because he wanted to do a dictation with her from a special book. And that was a 6, that she was already feeling that she was going to make mistakes and that her father would shout at her. So that was a 6, and we brought it down tapping to a 3, I believe, or a 2. And then I thought, well, I already felt her a bit limpish. She wasn't participating very much. I think this was not at all what she had expected. And we started on, when she went down, he couldn't find the book. And he had mislaid it. And he was shouting at her about it. And where the hell is this book? And his voice went up, and he started banging on the table, and this frightened her terribly. And that's when she thought he was going to kill her. I said, are you sure you thought he? Yes, he was going. And so I said this while we were tapping. I'm so scared of my father, and I'm thinking that he's going to kill. And then she couldn't go on, and I could see her face, change, and I knew, oh God, the tears are coming. And they came, and there was some sobbing, and I tapped on her, and I said, and I held her hand, and I said, don't worry, I'm here, and all that. And I tapped, and so scared, and this and that, and it went a little bit. It was a little bit better after that. And then we did it again, And again, she was sobbing. And I could only put my arms around her. I mean, I tried not to and behave, like not her mother, because I wasn't. And she just came willingly, and she was in my arms and for about 5 minutes. And I went on talking about this very softly. And as I had my hand around her, I could tap under the arm on the spot under the arm. So I went on tapping very softly and also trying to make her understand that her father wasn't really shouting at her. He was just wanting to shout. And I'm also trying to tell these kids that they can change their mental understanding of their father and his behavior, but we cannot change his behavior. Okay. And they have to understand. So
the thing I recall about what you wrote to me here, and the thing to focus on here is the fact that she was, this is your term, abreacting.
Because I learned from you this thing exists. Yes.
It's as though, yes, you were making some headway, but all of a sudden, just some big issue shows up. I mean, she responds in a way that, yes, you can do some tapping and bring down, etc. But this was a real abreaction. You weren't sure what to do. Hence, were you doing it right? I mean, do I have the essence?
And I think, oh God, what am I doing to this girl? I'm making things worse for her. That's what I was.
All right. Now, this is something Sherry may have some wisdom on as well, but in a case like this, of course, I'm not there, so I don't know all the circumstances. I don't know the girl. I don't, there's a lot of things that are missing. But from my experience, when this kind of thing happens, there is something underneath what you're tapping on. And I've talked about this a little earlier today.
Yeah,
there's something underneath what you're tapping on that is even bigger than this particular event. And I'm going to do a couple of guesses here just to give the idea of it. Okay. Yes, there is her being afraid of her father and his behaviors. Yes. Tap, tap, tap on specific events. Okay. Now, what could well be underneath that, and it wouldn't surprise me, is a built-in thing that has been going on for the previous 10 years of her life, which is, I'm not lovable. I don't count. There's something wrong with me. Okay. Now, the son may not have developed those thoughts. The daughter may. But the father's reaction, tap, tap, tap on a specific event, and you haven't taken care of the specific event well. She's abreacting. It's likely because of something deeper. Now, if somebody is carrying around, especially a child, who does not feel lovable or loved, if that is the case, that's a big, big issue, and the father's behavior is emphasizing that. Yes, you're unlovable, and I'm gonna be violent as a result of that, okay? Because you deserve it. That would be her interpretation.
It's her interpretation, yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, I don't know how she would interpret things, okay? I really don't. I have to give you that as a possibility, but it's one that I've seen so often. Adults have it as well. Let me talk about that for a minute, because I've talked with many people over time who will tell me they had a happy childhood, okay? And when they tell me that, I rarely believe it, okay? That doesn't mean that they didn't have a serene childhood. That didn't mean they didn't have a supportive childhood, okay? Maybe the parents were always there for them, put them through school, helped them with their homework, did whatever they did, and were, to the outside world, supportive parents. But one example I always give is that my client, when she was a child, her parents, one was a doctor and one was an athlete, and they were very, very well known and respected in the community. The child was neither one of those things, and they were too big for her. I mean, they were outside of her range, and therefore she wasn't good enough. Yes, she was supported, etc., but that translates to I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. etc. Okay, so it's always how the person takes it. Now, to have this kind of a conversation with a 10-year-old girl, a child, is probably a bit too adult
Exactly.
to have that conversation.
Especially
for you-
this,
Go ahead.
especially this girl. The boy would have taken it, but she couldn't.
Okay.
She wasn't there.
So we need to just first of all recognize there's likely something deeper still. And in my experience, even though I may be wrong in the fact that it would be I'm not lovable, I might start counseling her with that. And here you've been using tapping all this time, and I want to commend you for the way you break it down into the small pieces and of the specific event and so on. That's great. This is a great case actually for unseen therapists, because I'm if you ask this girl what her thoughts are about gods or fairies or spirit, or what would she say?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Okay. Well, chances are children tend to be very open to that.
She was
Okay.
closing.
And so you could ask her, or angels, you might want to use the term angels instead of unseen therapists, which is maybe a bit too adult, but angels, for example, or God or something like that. Okay. And start asking her about that and say, well, angels, as you're holding her in your arm and maybe tapping on her on this point and so on. Angels always love us. Did you ever know that? And start getting into a conversation like that. And then mentally bring in unseen therapists in this conversational EFT way we're doing. And that will help dilute this whole bit about I'm not lovable, I don't count, I'm not good enough, that stuff, it's all in that same little basket kind of thing.
Mhm.
Now, does that help?
Me?
Yeah.
Does it help me? Yes, very much. Thank you.
Okay.
But I have only just started working with the unseen therapist, and this idea of yours is excellent, because I can not really bring in the term unseen. I didn't know how to handle that, and I still think maybe I'm not doing that right.
Well,
So-
okay, yes, and thank you. And let me comment on not doing it right. Okay. Sitting in this chair for over 20 years now, having tried to teach EFT to people, and having even revised my own teaching over time as I learned more and more and more and more and refined it, etc. I have found that people have taken what I've taught, particularly in the early years, and they have assumed that's all there is to it. And they go off to teach somebody else. They change it, first of all, a little bit, to fit their own beliefs. And then they teach it to somebody else who teaches it to somebody else. I can tell you with everything in me that at least 95% of the people out there don't do EFT right.
Very encouraging. Thank you.
And for you to sit there and tell me that you are taking this specific event and breaking it down into pieces, like going down the stairs and the stuff you're talking about, that is so advanced over what the vast majority of people to do. And the fact that you test and retest, almost everybody out there tests. What they do is they say, well, how do you feel now? Oh, it's a lot better. Oh, good. We tested. But no. That's a great formula for being confused by a temporary result. Okay. So anyway, yes, we're always worrying about doing things right, and as far as unseen therapists are concerned, I get that a lot. Am I really inviting her in correctly, and so on? When I invite her in, I don't feel this massive loving state that I'm supposed to feel. I mean, therefore, I'm not doing it right. Well, let me tell you something. I don't feel it either. Okay.
Good. Okay.
I do this often, and as somebody said in one of these things, it's like you do it, you keep doing it, after a while it gets worn out or something like that, and so you don't get into what you used to get into and so on. No, all you're really doing here, the unseen therapist, I said before, is not really out there. in here. It's a state in here that we have covered over with our own beliefs and our in separation and our own guilts and angers and griefs and stuff that we resentments and angers that we cover it over with. This is a way of inviting it. We're saying it's a way of being open. So we just generate a loving moment. We just remember a loving moment, you know, with your dog or your daughter or somebody, spouse or something, okay, uncle. Remember some loving moment. That's all we're asking for here. And you're doing it right, just doing that. Now, if you can get into some glorious state, that's good too, okay? But it's not required to get results. I've been talking a lot. Sherry, you got thoughts?
Oh, Marielle, it's so tempting to feel that you didn't do it right. I think everybody feels that. Especially when you came from a successful session with her brother and it kind of unfolded rather easily, I'll say, I think.
Really easy.
And then all of a sudden you get to the sister and she's into this big emotion and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I didn't do something right. We should have entered this more painlessly, you know, maybe tearless trauma, and you're beating yourself up. From where Unseen Therapist is sitting, this could have been the most successful session of the two. She got all this emotion up. She put it on the table. It's there. And you did beautifully. You were tapping, I believe, and you kept tapping because when that emotion is there, that's the best time to release it. And so, of course, the human in you wants to stop and say, I'm so sorry this is happening, because that happens to me when I work with someone and I see that massive emotion. The human in me is sorry they're having to go through it, but the healer in me is thrilled to see the emotion coming up, ready to be released. And if you can hang tough, hang with Unseen Therapist, don't abandon your client and stay with it and keep tapping or keep bringing in Unseen Therapist, there will be a nice release, which sounded like there was. And you said she looked tired. She didn't want to release anymore. So a lot, it looks like, came up and out. It's just ego that tells us she was upset, so there's something you did wrong. And that's always what ego wants us to feel. You know, on top of everything else, now we don't even know how to be a healer. You know, that's, you know, one more thing we can beat ourselves up about. But don't fall into that trap. Part of what's going on here is not just the healing of this young girl, it's your learning. And so who knows that Unseen Therapist didn't sort of bring this about, create this experience so you'd have the opportunity to learn and to trust more who sits with you in any healing session. It's the power of the universe that's sitting in that chair with you. There's no reason to go into a panic when you see all this emotion. Instead, do what it looks like you did. You stayed with it and you kept tapping. And just remind yourself, I'm not alone here. I have the power with me to help bring this to a nice conclusion. And so you got to a point after the hour, it was enough. And then if she's willing to go again and perhaps again, and as Gary says, there's likely this deeper issue underneath, then explore that and maybe do it in a way that's you feel would be gentler to take the edge off before you go into it. But that's just you learning one layer at a time how to be more effective. So from Unseen Therapist's point of view, it looks like it was a huge success.
Well, I would interject there for a second. I just forgot to do this, but one thing you might want to do, Marielle, is the next time you see the 10-year-old girl, you don't necessarily have to engage her in another session, but you can ask her questions about her response to her father. Have you heard from your father recently? Or something like that, okay? And see what her response is. Her response may be quite a bit mellower than it used to be. Don't know that, but that's a way of testing.
Yeah. See, but I think she is a little bit scared now of tapping and of EFT. Maybe she doesn't want to come. Maybe she doesn't even want to see me for a while.
Well,
which is okay. I mean, that's also part of life. I accept
sure.
that.
And that could well be. If you do happen to see her, a simple testing question might produce some results. So
anyway, I'm very grateful.
I'm always testing. Okay, Muriel, thank you so much. Now, let me see. I'm going to speak with Ann Ryan and then Michael Jakowitz, but we'll speak with Ann Ryan right now. Hold on. Ann Ryan, hello.
Hi, Gary.
How is it in Ireland nowadays?
All is good, thank you.
Let me see. You had 3 questions, so let me kind of remind myself here for a moment, all right? How do you deal with children? That was one of them. Do we do it? You're actually asking, do we do it any differently than we would with adults?
Yes.
And to me, the answer is, well, yes and no. I mean, the same principles still apply, okay? But the way you talk with a child, it's really a matter of rapport. The terms that you use, like you might not want to use unseen therapists, you'd use angels, like I talked about here just recently, for example, but, or, a fairy or something like that, Was your question beyond that?
No, I think even what you covered with Muriel has given me enough to go with.
Okay. Now,
my third question was my biggest one, just on your list.
Yes, but I'm going to talk about number 2 just for a moment. Okay. We've already touched on it a little bit, but I like to answer questions over and over and over again, because every time I do, it's a little different angle, and there's something wonderful about repetition. When people get tired of having me say something, that means they've learned it. When they're tired of having me say, we all have the same issues, only the details are different. When they hear that, they go, don't say that again. You finally got it, okay? Anyway, so this one here, you have a client coming up, I guess, who doesn't even want to talk about, she doesn't want to get into her events with you.
Yes.
She will conversationally discuss them, apparently.
In a car park where we had a conversation, she told me everything. But she said, but I couldn't sit in front of you and do this, even though she had just done it. And I thought, I wonder how one could be creative with somebody like that.
Well, that's just conversational EFT.
In the car park it is, but really to go deeper, sitting across from someone, still just conversational for the whole hour?
I see. Okay. All right. So there you are in the car park, and she's unloading her stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. You're bringing in unseen, you're not closing your eyes doing all this formal stuff. You're used to it. You're bringing in unseen therapists. Okay. If you wish, you're becoming her. Peace, stuff goes on. Hopefully resolution. Now, when she's talking about her stuff, she's not necessarily, I wasn't there, but typically when they're talking about their stuff, they're not talking about their specific events.
No.
They're talking about how they can't stand their husband or whatever, okay? And they're talking about it in more general type stuff. So, conversation, you could say, oh, really? Well, what exactly did he do? I mean, to use the husband example, okay? And you guide her toward a specific event.
Okay.
Okay? And that's easy enough to do. I mean, if they're on their horse, and they're worked up about something, chances are you can get them into real big detail just conversationally.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it may not be as precise as you could do one-on-one, they're cooperating and all of that, but you can still get a bunch of stuff done. Okay. Now, your other question, I'm going to like summarize it, but if I don't summarize it well, you correct me, okay?
Perfect, yeah.
Sometimes you're dealing with someone and you're wanting to do it right and do the specific events, but you're somehow guided, or you feel I ought to be doing something more global on this. So you're sort of guided. You maybe even think unseen therapist is saying go global on this instead of specific, but yet you want to do it right and be pure to the process and all of that. So you're in some kind of a conflict. What do you do? Did I say the question well?
That's very good. Yes, you did. And the word global didn't come to me when these things pop up. But when I stand back and look at it, I think, yeah, how do we stay pure to the process? And that doesn't just have to mean it's specific event, but how easy it would be to keep wandering off on tangents. And yet, when it has happened, it's such a pull, such a guidance. I don't know what one would call it, that one would be really slamming the door not to follow it.
All right. Okay. Excellent question. If I had any stars left, I'd give them all to you. Okay. I'll go get some. Here's some stars for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the process actually includes going global. Okay. However, the way I've unfolded the process, the way I've written the book about it, is that let's start with the most efficient way of doing it that we know of, and let's go to specific events. Let's get down to the more specific we get, the better. Let's start collapsing those, and we have seen over and over and over again as we collapse specific things, events, other stuff starts to unfold as well. Generalization effect, physical symptoms start to fade. A lot of good stuff. Okay. However, I have also found, even in the early times doing this, I remember particularly there was a fellow who had an issue with I'm not good enough. That's a very general thing. There's a lot of specific events underneath that, but I'm not good enough. Okay. And so I began hearing him, but my take on that was, well, okay, I'm hearing all of this. I'm not good enough, but I'm also saying, boy, there's going to be a whole lot of specific events under I'm not good enough, I mean, that goes back to preschool and school and, all throughout one's life you get rejected. And I mean, this world tends to reject you. Okay, it's easy to do. So I remember in this case going, man, I don't have the time, to devote to all of this. So let's just see what we can do with a global approach. Okay. And so I started using some global type reframes on it. Okay. I remember one of the reframes was, well, you're not good enough. You're not good enough to do what? Now I sort of getting a little more specific there, but you're not good enough. See, he's saying it like I'm not good enough to do anything, You're not good enough to drive a car? Oh, no, I can drive a car. Okay. Well, you're not good enough to eat a sandwich. You're not good enough to do this. You're not good enough to do that. Oh, no. Well, what are you good enough to do? Now, with that, that's all reframe, by the way. That's all reframe. That's taking him from, oh, gee, I'm not good enough at anything, which was his default. Anytime he's got asked to do something or wanted to participate in something, it's always, I'm not good enough. Okay. So that's all global type reframe. And when I finally got down to it, what it finally came down to after I asked him a lot of these questions was, I said, well, tell me a time when you weren't good enough. Now I'm asking about a specific event. Okay. And so he gives me one. It has to do something. He had a brother, and there's a girl across the street that was having some kind of a party, and she invited the brother and not him, and he felt rejected. He wasn't good enough. So we did one unseen therapist session on that specific event, together with all that reframing stuff that I did. Okay, what are you not good enough to do? Okay, be specific for me, okay? And the whole thing collapsed. I talked to him 2 or 3 weeks later. I tried to poke and push and pull on I'm not good enough. Went no place. It went no. He would say, well, there's some things I don't do well. I mean, I remember when I was reframing, I was saying, I'm in my 70s now, and I'm not about to go play professional football. I'm not good enough. That's all there is to it. I'm not good enough to this. I'm not good enough to sing like Barbara Streisand. I'm not good enough. I wouldn't be president of the United States. I don't care what. I'm not good enough. There's so many things I'm not good enough to do. Those are all reframes on the global thing. And my guess is that those reframes itself did the job. I did have one specific event in there. So that's me rambling some. And to say, yes, if you're pulled to do the global thing, but don't let go of the idea that the more efficient way that we know of is to get down to specific events. Sometimes I will just go global because intuitively, maybe I should, intuitively I'm thinking, I can probably take the edge off at least by going global, on these things. And any specific events I do are going to be easier to deal with. Okay. So global is a tool. That's my point. Going global, going general and not specific is a tool, but it's not a tool that necessarily replaces specific events. It's a tool that can do a job much more efficiently in some cases than going through a lot of specific events. Okay, how'd I do?
Perfect. That's really clear. I think I had a picture of global being bad, and now I see global's in the toolkit as well. So that's really good.
Well, I'm glad that you see it as being bad at one time, because at one time that's the way I portrayed it. That was before Unseen Therapists, because so many people doing tapping would just simply go, oh, even though I feel bad about myself, and they think they did EFT. Okay. That's very global and bad. No, maybe it helps a little bit, but it's certainly not. That's the shallow end of the swimming pool, put it that way, in that case. But with Unseen Therapists, now we have a wiser power behind us that can do things that we can't do with our mechanical human tapping.
Great. Yeah, perfect. That's brilliant. Thank you.
I love you Britishers because you say the word brilliant. I just love that. It's great for the ego and everything. It's wonderful. Okay, now time is moving on. I'm not getting to everybody. Dr. Harry Merle, if you are still with us and listening, I'm going to get together with you personally about the hearing issue. I have something I want to deal with you on specifically. And Catherine, we probably will not get to yours today, but I can get to you specifically on those. Let me make sure I've got everybody else here that we talked about. I do want to get to Michael Jackowitz just a moment. Here we go. Okay, this will be the last one. Oh, before I bring Michael on, Sherry, anything to say with Anne?
Oh, I was just going to summarize in a sentence when she said, I want to know how to stay pure to the process. And Gary pointed out the process does include, on occasion, going global if you feel so moved to do so. And so my thought is, rather than worried about staying pure to the process, stay pure to the unseen therapist.
Okay.
If she inspires you to go global, go global.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just in case your global fails, you've got the specific event route to go. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so Michael, say something.
Good morning, Gary.
Good morning. Good morning. There you are. Okay. I got your message here. Okay, now.
Okay.
But let me remind myself first, okay? Hold on a second. There's a person. Okay, yes. I think the first part of this has to do with someone in a group. I gather you're in a practice group, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's a practice group you've just developed on your own?
Yes.
Okay. How many are in it, by the way?
At the moment, we have about 5, and it depends on whether we're doing night sessions or morning sessions. So.
Okay. All right. But you said there was somebody there having a very difficult time evoking the feeling of loving kindness, fondness, etc. And to the extent where some of their efforts at that were getting sort of worn out. That was a term you used.
That's correct.
But I've already discussed that. Yeah, these things do get sort of old in a way, but all we're really doing is opening ourselves up. We're just saying, okay, we're ready. That's all we're really saying by addressing a loving moment. So if I were you, we're talking to this person, I would unload that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, lastly, you had this question. All illness and disease is caused by negative emotions. That was a sort of a quote of some things that I said.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Let me ask you, before we get into this point, was there something else I missed in your letter you want to go over?
No, those were the only two topics that I really wanted to cover.
Okay. All right. So you said, obviously, this quote we just said is not verbatim, though you get the point. Infants that are born with genetic, hereditary disease or not otherwise healthy. Okay.
Correct.
And so the natural question is, well, gee, do they fall into the category of having their ailments caused by negative emotions?
Correct.
I mean, that's the essence of your question, isn't it?
Yes.
So therefore, this statement I put forward might have some flaws in it and so on. All right. Got it. Okay. So let me talk about that a little bit if I can. And you're right. It might have some flaws. The deeper statement is that all of our illness and disease doesn't really come from negative emotions. It's related, but let me explain. All illness and disease comes from the belief in separation.
Okay.
All right. And from there emanates all of our ailments. We are really one. It doesn't appear that way, but we are really one. I mean, our most pristine scientists are telling us that, quantum physics. We are all one. We have all kinds of spiritual experiences that people are relating, talking about this all one thing. We believe, however, that we are separate. We have mentally, belief-wise, divorced ourselves from our real being. The unseen therapist, who again is not really out there, is really a state within that's covered over by now our emotions, our guilts, our griefs, our resentments, our angers. When we are resentful about someone, and everybody here has a list of people they are resentful about, okay? And it can get pretty long sometimes, and you can get worked up about some of these resentments. But just holding those resentments, even if they appear to be fully and completely justified, is keeping you away from oneness. It's a covering over the oneness state that we are trying to generate and uncover within ourselves through all these practices. So, the real cause of all these things is our belief in separation, including the things you just talked about. Okay.
Okay.
In your letter. So, we use the emotional issues as stepping stones towards the realization of our oneness reality. If we are having resentments, for example, angers, griefs, guilts, and things that get housed within specific events, and we deal with those individually, then we are starting to unload or dilute, if you will, the covering over our true oneness. And the more we do that, the more diluted, the more transparent, the more flimsy becomes the covering, and the more we are able to let our true unseen therapist, our true reality, show up.
Okay.
So, yes, in a way, saying literally that the emotions, et cetera, all the cause of this may not be all that accurate. But on the other hand, what I have to do is deal with some practicalities involved, because it's those individual emotions that are covering over our belief in that are maintaining our belief in separation. Okay. Now, did I answer the question?
Yeah. That part I understood in regards to the separation. Again, and it's just with the infants and the babies, that's just been digging at me for months. So I thought maybe you could provide some sort of insight, you or Sherry.
Well, Sherry may. I've got another thought or two on that. Okay. An infant comes out, okay, and has some kind of ailment. So that ailment could well have occurred in the womb. There are many occasions where I've had conversations with mothers who have, or even people who have ailments that they cannot find any specific events for or any kind of whatever's for. And so I would ask them about, well, what happened when you were in the womb? Of course, they wouldn't know, but they would ask the mother.
Sure.
And they and mother may have been abused during that
Absolutely.
period of time. Mother may have had a great deal of anger and resentment and fears and all kinds of other stuff, which baby would then
Sure.
Develop. You could use the same argument if your beliefs go this direction for past lives.
Sure.
The whole thing about heredity, I have my own view on that. Yes, and maybe Gabrielle, if you want to talk on this, I'm going to unmute you just in case you want to talk on it. But to me, yes, there may be some genetic heredity, etc., that gives rise to some things. But there's also something else that gets passed down from family to genetically from person to person on down the family line, and that's beliefs.
Sure.
Beliefs get handed down as well, okay? Nobody in this family is worth anything, okay? and if you're one of those children, you can develop some kind of thing like father has, okay? So I'm not sure, I could be disagreed, including by Gabrielle on this, about the role of heredity. But are you there, Gabrielle?
I am. I'm listening.
You have a thought?
I do. Actually, I totally agree with you. In the sense that the whole genetics thing is very confusing, but I strongly believe it is the beliefs, and the beliefs you inherit from your parents or your grandparents or even further back. Because what you believe, your belief system, is what manifests itself. It's got nothing to do with the genes and stuff. That's just, I don't even know how to say this politely. I really am at a loss for words here. So there's the big genome project in the 50s and 60s of the last century, and the scientists and doctors thought, now we will find the key to every disease. And this is not the case, because your genetic makeup, it's just a blueprint, and whatever shows is the result of the environment, and in the environment, your thoughts, your emotions, but your thoughts and beliefs are the most important factor in what shows up. So, in short, Gary, I agree with you.
Well, yeah, but there's also I'm going to give a little vignette here in a minute, but there's also this piece, this observation that people who are supposed to be genetically have some kind of disease don't have it. Okay, their sister might have it, but they don't have it. Or this kind of thing happens. So you have to explain why somebody doesn't have it as well. That's one thing. But I remember a case I was doing. In fact, it's one of my videos, and it's one of the videos I believe that's even the membership group is with a fellow by the name of Mark, and Mark had cystic fibrosis. Okay, and the way he was explaining it to me on stage was that there's a set of genes that the parents have to have in order for a child, to have cystic fibrosis. Okay, a set of genes, and the odds of any one child having cystic fibrosis because parents who had these particular genes getting together and so on, was 1 in 4. Okay. So there were actually 4 children in his family. But all 4 of them, all 4 had cystic fibrosis. Now, I'm enough of a mathematician engineer to know the odds against that are 25 to 1. Okay. Now, it could be that the odds just fell in that place, but I have a hard time buying that. There has to be some other explanation for why all 4 would have that. Okay. The odds are way against that. Okay. So, thoughts on that, Gabrielle?
No, I can be short again. I agree with you.
Okay. All right. Sherry, thoughts?
Yes, I can bring in perhaps a spiritual view of what might be going on with
Sure.
the babies.
Thank you.
I remembered having that thought myself. I thought, gee, what have they done to have negative emotions to be causing some sort of genetic defect or physical issue? And what I was reminded, and this explanation may sound bizarre to some people whose beliefs are different, but I believe that we are all one, and we were all created long, long before this particular incarnation. I do not believe that this is our first rodeo here. And so a spirit who comes into this life already with some sort of physical issue, it is my belief that possibly, in addition to what Gary and Gabrielle are talking about, that they had some major unresolved emotion regarding some event that they brought in with them to balance out and resolve in this life, perhaps. And so it could be something that happened in a lifetime before this one, which to me explains why they would come in with something. Their soul may desire to learn something, or to be challenged by something, or to help bring about learning with a family, and they plan to a certain extent, perhaps, to come in with a certain physical issue because it's going to help them learn how to cooperate, or to be humble, or to understand where their true power lies, and it's not in the body and how it looks. There could be all sorts of reasons a soul might actually request to come in with a certain physical issue. We have this judgment that something has gone wrong, but it may be that it's going to serve them and the people around them very well by bringing in whatever physical issue they have. But also, I believe it could be the result of a previous lifetime's emotions that didn't get resolved, and they brought them into this one to work with. Because I've worked with people that have unexplained physical issues, and when we worked with it, we realized that it was something that likely happened in a past life that they brought with them, and we resolved that because it sort of specifically came up. Something happened in the shoulder repeatedly in repeated lifetimes, and once they realized what it was, because they were repeating it again in this one, then it disappeared. So that's just a thought, and I know for a lot of us it sounds kind of strange, but it is a possibility that because I don't believe we were created in this particular incarnation, our soul has been around for eons, and we may bring in things into this lifetime that show up when we're born, and it has nothing to do with emotions that were experienced at birth or in the
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have to sort of accept here is we do not have a perfect explanation for everything that explains things on our terms. Okay. We're dealing with some some mysteries here, and we're finding ways to use this not so very well tapped power within. And we're getting better and better and better at it. And questions like Michael asked, which are very good ones, makes us think, so. But we're not going to have perfect answers that follow perfect guidelines and perfect bullet points. We got to be a little more flowery about it, I guess. So,
Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Gabrielle. Appreciate you.
all right. Thanks, Michael.
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Hold on. Let me. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for today. With all that, I have a big hug for everybody, a kiss, and for Anne, who I see you there, you're brilliant. Bye, everybody.